census business, so she won't be here today. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I believe I would like Danielle, would you please lead us in a word of prayer?
Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this county. Lord, thank you for the ones that you've put over it. Lord, I pray that you would just give them wisdom, guidance, Lord, that every step we take would be in line of what your perfect will is. Father, I pray for unity among our people. Lord, thank you for this job. Thank you so much for everything you've given us, for the freedoms. Lord, the way you bless. You are an amazing God. Thank you for this day, and I pray that we would be faithful to you throughout the day, and especially with the decisions that are made in this room. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Knight?
Yes, sir.
You had asked, and we shall deliver.
All right, we have a presentation by our good friends from the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Mr. John Oros, he's the president, CEO, David Galbraith, and Sarah. There we are. So we're going to let you all do your presentation first, and we'll let you take a photo.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. To say that we have been on an incredible run when it comes to sports tourism in Birmingham and Jefferson County is an understatement. Many of you remember that back in 2017 we hosted the Senior Games. And of course, everybody knows about the World Games that are coming up next year. And in 2025, we are following it up with an opportunity to have the World Police and Fire Games, one of the largest amateur sporting events in the country and in the world, come to us and be in Birmingham and Jefferson County. What's so amazing about this is that, and I'm not so much amazed, but we compete not just nationally, but also internationally for these types of events. So cities like Barcelona and Lisbon and Melbourne and Sydney and Los Angeles, all of these cities and destinations vie to have these events that we're fortunate enough to have. This will be a citywide and a countywide opportunity. So all of our municipalities are going to benefit because the games will be so spread throughout the county that everybody will realize the economic impact. These events bring hundreds of thousands of visitors here who spend hundreds of millions of dollars between the three of these events. And of course, they're spending that in our restaurants, our attractions, and our retail establishments all throughout the county. That's it for me. I'd like to, because we have such a, we haven't had an opportunity to present to the commission in such a long time, I thought that it would be good to do a real quick refresher about the value of tourism to Birmingham and Jefferson County. And I have our Vice President of Tourism here, Sarah Hamlin, who's going to tell you a little bit about that. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Sarah.
Many of you may ask, what is the Convention and Visitors Bureau? Well, we are the economic development agency for tourism for this county. And in Birmingham, the economic impact recognized, we welcomed in 2018 over 4.6 million visitors to this county. And those visitors generated $2.3 billion in terms of economic impact to the area. So that's something really to recognize for this county. The Alabama Tourism Department, however, reported that every Alabamian saves $500 annually in state taxes because of the tourism industry. Our goal, of course, is to bring more business to Birmingham. We want them to come, Birmingham and Jefferson County, we want them to come to the area, spend the night, enjoy the city, and go home. We don't want the county to have fire and police and educate, but we really recognize and appreciate the dollars that they bring here. A couple of years ago, our office commissioned a company in North America to develop a destination master plan for the greater Birmingham area. And we engaged the community and civic leaders, elected officials, and our stakeholders in the process. You all, the commissioners, you all should have received a copy of this. If not, we'll be happy to get one to you. And this plan outlines 6 strategic goals for the county. And the focus were on downtown opportunities, infrastructure projects, regional collaboration, destination branding, unique and authentic experiences, and lastly, visitor-driven festivals and events. Well, this is an event that we're trying to get to Birmingham, the World Fire and Police Games. And Birmingham truly in Jefferson County has become a southern sports destination around the country and recognized around the world as well. David Galbaugh, our Vice President of Sports and Marketing, will tell you a little bit more about the opportunity we have for the World Police and Fire Games. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for giving us this opportunity. Just want to kind of go over some high-level particulars of the World Police and Fire Games to let you know a little bit more about the event. First of all, this is it's an international multi-sport event for first responders. Additionally, it's multi-week, so these first responders and their families will be in for 2 weeks in July of 2025. The event was first started in California, and the first event was in San Diego. Additionally, like John had mentioned, we've had events, World Police and Fire Games in Vancouver, Melbourne, Australia, Barcelona, New York, Los Angeles, and the 2019 iteration was in Chengdu, China. A little bit more about the event: 10,000 athletes, over 100,000 spectators, 3,000 volunteers, 1,600 medals events. So you're gonna get a lot of gold when you come to the World Police and Fire Games. 55 plus sports, and you've got traditional sports like soccer, basketball, baseball, golf, tennis, etc. But then you've got some first responder specific events like Ultimate Firefighter, the stair race, and from what I understand, this is quite an event where you put on your full gear and you run up 30 or 40 flights of stairs, and you're almost in cardiac arrest when you get to the top. But it doesn't sound like something for me, but it's a big event for the first responders. Additionally, you got police action pistol and police service dogs. John talked about this as well. 35 venues across the entire community. 70 countries will be represented, and $75 million in economic impact. So with that, I've probably said enough. I'm going to turn it over and let a video illustrate a little bit more about the games. And then we'll just open it up for question and answer after that.
There are few places in the world that have a more profound regard for courage, and we have never been shy about putting our reverence on display. Today, this is where the courageous and the duty-bound from around the world come still, not simply to study history, but to make it. In the summer of 2015, Fairfax County, Virginia, and the National Capital Region will welcome humble heroes from communities around the world as it hosts the 2015 World Police and Fire Games. As exciting as they are inspirational, the World Police and Fire Games will attract, celebrate, and honor over 12,000 first responders, representing police and fire departments and other public safety agencies from more than 70 countries to compete in venues across the region. With more athletes than a Summer Olympic Games, the 2015 World Police and Fire Games will be among the world's largest multi-sport competitions, fielding over 60 sporting events spanning over 10 days. Strength will be tested. Character will be revealed. History will be made. But courage will never be questioned. Join us as we celebrate the Games of Heroes, the 2015 World Police and Fire Games.
Even though that was a 2015 clip, that's still a preview and prelude to what we will do here in 2025. So does anybody have any questions? I know we discussed this at the last committee meeting, and we appreciate you all coming and giving this presentation. And we are on a timeline to get the application in. Birmingham has committed verbally to put in the same amount that's requested from us, and that's $2 million over a 5-year period, beginning in 2022, so that we don't stack on top of our commitment to the World Games. So, and you know, the games were in Chengdu last year.
Rotterdam this year.
Right, and then Montreal, is that it?
Ottawa. It'll go to Winnipeg.
Okay, one of those Canadian, and then here. And Chengdu, China, is when we complete the World Games here, we'll be handing the flag to Chengdu, China, who will host the next World Games. So, anyway, I have a resolution I would like to.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sir.
That's active duty and retired.
And retired, and they have different categories for competition.
Age groups.
Yeah,
So economic impact,
75.
75 million.
75 million.
Yes, sir.
Over that 10-day.
Correct. And one thing I failed to mention is that because of that time frame, that July time frame, our hotels are very soft, and so this is a perfect time. I mean, that's incremental business that you wouldn't get typically because it's over the 4th of July. A lot of people don't stay in the hotel, so they were able to accommodate us and go with those dates.
And it's a little bit different for World Games, whereas we have to provide the housing for the athletes that come to World Games. Here, they provide their own housing.
And a lot of the first responders really use it as a vacation.
Yeah.
So I mentioned it at the last meeting. In 92 or 94, we hosted the International Law Enforcement Games here in Birmingham. And it was very, very well received. I was a part of the Southeastern Police and Fire Championships for 20 years and ran them for 5. So the value that it brings for our first responders to come and participate is, and the camaraderie that comes along with it, because these guys are going from one country to the next, one competition to the next. And we have a lot of guys here that participate in those international games. They're a little bit older. I think they're in your district, most of them. But not that you're older. But I'm extremely supportive and hope that it goes very well and hope we're able to win them. So I would move this to the agenda.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. That'll go to the commission for final vote on Thursday, but I don't anticipate any problems. So, thank you all for coming.
Thank you all for your
Thank you for the
support. Thank you very much. It'll be a great event for our community.
Now, when we had this discussion over at the Convention Bureau, you know, Representative John Rogers is amongst our board members, and I told him I was going to enter him into the competition, javelin catching. So, guys, thank y'all. We appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Joe, why don't you just keep going?
Well, maybe I will. All right. I have one item I want to pull on the unusual demands, number 65. Unusual demands. Travis?
Yes, sir.
Purchasing, anybody have any questions on these? Do I have a motion on 1 through 6?
Move items.
Have a motion?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Multiple staff development, budget management office. Do I have a motion?
Move items.
Have a motion? Have a second? All in favor, please say aye. I have a question on with the Board of Equalization, but I'll save that for a minute. Developmental Services, Mr. Morrison, 2019-038.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Case number 38 is a request for a planned unit development. This is on Newfound Road. If you remember a few months ago, we approved a similar request just to the north of this property. Subject property is highlighted in gold right here, And just to the north along this property, we approved a development that was actually 71 lots, so there were more lots proposed to the one to the north. Again, this is compatible with the county land use plan for this particular area. As you can see from your aerial photograph, we have a lot of smaller lot development that's just to the south. All that, of course, is within the city of Gardendale. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval contingent upon submission of a drainage study as well as contingent upon connection to sanitary sewer or otherwise providing a means of septic disposal. In addition to a covenant for setting the garage back 25 feet from the back of the sidewalk or back of curb if there's no sidewalk within it. And again, that's to prevent the dangling of vehicles into the county right of way. Any questions?
What's the waterway?
Well, that's Newfound Creek. And forgive me as well, on this particular case, there is also a covenant to avoid the flood, any development within the flood hazard area, which is typical when we have these planned unit developments where there is flood hazard area present on the property.
Looks like we're beginning to see a lot of development up in that northern.
Yes,
part
sir,
of the
this is the
county.
first of two cases just this month.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Oh, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Z 2019-037, Mr. Morrison.
This is a request to go from A1 to R1 in conjunction with a proposed subdivision of this property. You'll see here the property is highlighted in black. If you notice the surrounding area, both Morris and Kimberly have developed smaller subdivisions. And so in this instance, when they wanted to subdivide the property, we suggested that we go ahead and rezone to something that's compatible with what the municipalities have zoned in their particular areas as well. And as you can see, the subdivision that is proposed was approved last month by P&Z, and of course that approval was contingent upon this rezoning. So again, this is just adding one additional lot, and it's also, when you go from A1 to R1, you lose the right to mobile homes on the property as well. So this could be seen as somewhat of an enhancement, particularly as Morris and Kimberly have zoning that prevents that in their municipalities.
Come with the other.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Z 2019-040.
Also in the same general area as the other planned unit development case, what's being proposed here is a 204-lot residential development, again with common open space as we find and is required in the planned unit development. This is along Brookside Colberg Road. This is going to be to the south and to the west where you have existing, again, garden home development in Gardendale. Where the other development was going to be north of these developments that are here along Newfound Road, is going to be just to the south and west. In this particular instance, what we have, and you can tell from the aerial photograph, is you have a lot of high ridges, you have a lot of former strip mines, and a lot of property that's very challenging to develop. And what you have in this instance here, with this one particular property, is an area where you have the topographical issues that are more custom, more conducive to residential or any sort of development, really. And so in this instance, the Planning Commission found that this was compatible with the county land use plan as it is compatible with the development plans that you see here to the north and to the east. And again, likewise, they recommended approval, again with contingencies upon submission and approval of preliminary drainage analysis, as well as the provision to provide sewer access. In this instance, the sewer is not adjacent to the property, but it's down the street a little bit. And so they'll either have to extend that sewer or go forth with the planning to do an on-site septic disposal system for the entire development. There's also the covenant for the 25-foot setbacks for the garages from the back of curb or the back of sidewalk if there is no, or the back of sidewalk or back of curb if there is no sidewalk.
How far away is that sewer line?
Ooh, it's a few hundred feet.
Okay. I would recommend that we ask them to hook them to the sewer.
I would defer to the county attorney to that. Several years ago, that was something that was worded into contingencies and covenants and zoning cases in the past. And I think that there's been some legal reasons why we couldn't do that. but I would defer.
Well, in that instance, I would ask the sewer people to run the sewer down to there.
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
This is, how far is this from the city of Birmingham?
Oh, the city of Birmingham is adjacent. Here, we'll show you the zone map. Birmingham is adjacent, Gardendale is here to the north and to the east, and then you've got Brookside over here to the west and northwest.
Do they have any intentions to annex this once it's done, or do we know?
I haven't heard any peep or anything regarding that, no.
Somebody will reach out there to get it.
Yeah.
After we do the improvements.
How much infrastructure improvements are we putting into that?
All of this is funded by the developer, as far as.
It'll be by the developer.
That is correct.
So all we stand to benefit from sewer if we can get sewer line down there
Correct.
and whatever ad valorem taxes.
Correct, and there'll probably be some improvements that'll be required along Brookside Colbert Road as well. You see, they've also got another access down here at Hodges Cemetery. They only propose that for an emergency access only. Because again, it's gonna be a lot to have to do to improve that particular roadway.
How much, and this is probably a Heather question, how much of that Brookside Colbert Road is in this city and how much is it in the county? Do you,
I believe in this instance, look, because both sides of the road coming down from Fieldstown Road where it connects to Colbert, all of that is unincorporated county. So I would imagine that all of that's under county control.
It is, and the way that this would work is the traffic analysis would tell us whether or not the developer would have to construct a turn lane at that location, but we wouldn't be doing any improvement. So.
this is closer to the 65 side than the I-22 side.
See that Republic Road goes straight down that.
We just drove this last night.
Yeah, that's why I drove it last night but that road.
You gotta be somewhere kind of in between, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because you've got 65 over here and then 22 right here. I think it's more of a straight shot to 22 than it is to 65.
That road's in need of improvement. But rather my teeth out.
Yeah. That looked like Morgan Road used to. I saw Heather cringe when I.
All right, any further questions? Do I have a motion?
I move.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
General Services. Roofing Program. I have anybody?
Yeah, I'm here for Jack. It's Steve Delaney contract with his architectural services to put the roofing contract on Tom Floor here.
On the which building?
Tom Floor, the sheriff.
Do we have to have, this is a roof. Do they take a roof off and put a roof on?
I would have to defer that to Jeff. That's way above my pay.
Well, I mean, we're gonna pay an architect $32,000 to say, yeah, you need to take that one off and put this one on.
They don't have to do the specs, sir.
Just,
I could put a roof on there for $32,000.
I could do it for 30. Mr. Attorney, can you help me on that?
Commissioner,
Or Mr. County Attorney, Manager.
the architect would do the specifications for it, and.
Well, I tell you what, I'll get up there and measure it for 15.
Yeah.
I mean, the specs is like,
There's more to it than that.
do I have a motion?
Hold on.
I have a motion.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. All right. Personnel Board, this is for acknowledgement only, Falls Facility Services. That's a contract for janitorial services for the
Second.
Personnel Board. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I have District 4, I have a board appointment, Glenwood Fire District. This is a reappointment, Leslie Wood to the Board of Trustees for a 5-year term ending December 30th, 2024.
Hold on.
Have a motion? Second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Concludes my report.
All right. Mr. Scales is asked to go next. So we will skip now to District 1.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. This report is for the Public Works, Community Services, and Intergovernmental Relations Committee. The first is an environmental services agreement, and is that going to be you, Mr. Denner? I don't see him in here.
Yeah,
Is that you?
Commissioner, yes.
Okay, very good. So we have one item, and this agreement is for $266,675,000, and then I'll defer to you at this moment.
Yes, ma'am. This is, we are almost close to migrating off of our mainframe system, and sewer billing is one of our main systems that we have, and this is for implementing that system, and we are partnering with Gartner to do a project management and a quality assurance to make sure that the whole implementation is being done in a proper way with the best practices.
Move the item.
Second.
The item has been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Under our District 1 report, we have several items, and one is a infrastructure. In fact, both are dealing with infrastructure. The first is an infrastructure agreement for North Smithfield Manor. Their storm shelter, they were in need of a generator, so thanks to the commission that we were able to amend the original language of what infrastructure dollars could be used for. And so we are applying it to this, and as a matter of fact, General Services will be providing this particular generator to this community. Anyone have any questions?
Is this one complete or the one that's not complete?
It's for the one that's completed.
That's correct.
Yeah, I was about to say, I thought that's. what
And they don't
we
put
agreed on.
these in from the get-go? We don't budget those in?
There is a requirement inside the facility. But this is just in case that one goes out.
This is a backup
Yes.
generator?
Yes.
We've discussed it before in the meeting.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions?
Move the item.
Okay, has been moved. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
In regards to number 2, I'd like to bring that up for unanimous consent, please. Well, Mr. County Attorney, does it need to be brought up by UC?
So I thought it's on the agenda.
The discussion is on the agenda already, so that
Okay,
doesn't require, the
very good.
discussion does not require unanimous consent.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. So, before I get started, I want the Sheriff's Department to come speak because I want to make sure that it is clear what the item is. This is an infrastructure grant, just as I've been able to do with the Forestdale community and others. So I just want to be clear on what's the item before us. And so you can go ahead and speak, and then we'll also have Tony, Sarah, and then we have 2 other people to speak to this item as well. So if you don't mind, Mr. Rodney, if you would identify yourself and who you're with and what we're doing.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, everyone. Rodney Jones, Sergeant, Jersey County Sheriff's Office. And what we have an opportunity here for is a couple of, well, first of all, like I said, we have, Sheriff has started a violent crimes victims assistant unit, which what it does is it helps anyone involved in violent crimes. We have a unit that actually goes out, provides assistance and resources for these victims, because lots of times, this doesn't happen all the time, and you're left with, what do I do? How do I go if it's following, go to court, or if it's, what do I do as far as filing paperwork and different things like that. So there's a violent crime victim assistance unit, and what this will do is allow us to have some space, as you say, this grant that offers the opportunity to get space for some of these coordinators. Right now, we are strapped for space, and this will allow us to have a place where they can set up. It can provide a place where, a lot of times, just from my experience, whenever you have a victim and you're helping them where they need to come back to to talk or to get assistance and stuff like that. It's very traumatic. So this would give an opportunity to have some place where they feel safe, where they can, if they have, you know, a lot of times they might have kids and stuff like that. We might have just an opportunity, a place where we can, they can go and have the opportunity to come and talk to our businesses, coordinators, and get what we need to get done. So, but that's what this is an opportunity to have space for those coordinators that would be assigned to different areas of the county.
So, next, if you don't mind, Mr. Sarah.
I have a question.
Can you hold your questions until I finish, if you don't mind? Do you mind?
Okay.
All right. So, Mr. Sarah, he is the owner of Sarah Automotive Management, and I have provided for each of you a copy of the executed agreement between the sheriff and Mr. Sarah, who is donating this space for $1. And it is for a 5-year renewable agreement, and so he can speak to his willingness as a business to do that. So, Mr. Sarah?
Yeah. Yes, we're willing to provide the space to the county for a substation that y'all can work out of. There's 2 spaces. There's one at the old Queensbury Shopping Center that my son and I purchased about 5 or 6 years ago and operate a parts warehouse out of there. And then there's a learning center, a daycare center, there's a barber shop, and several other spaces that are available. I think it's good for the community because it's an area that is really off the beaten track. It's on Carson Road, just a little bit east of Jeff State. It's really an excellent location, but it's in a heavily diversity neighborhood, and but these are good people, but they don't get a lot of. It doesn't appear to me that they get a lot of city police support. I think it'll be good for them. It'll be good for the shopping center because it'll be pretty much like over at the Crestwood when the city put in a substation. The shopping center flourished. I think that's what will happen on Carson Road. There's space there for a grocery store on the Parkway next to the management company. We're willing to provide 32 feet of frontage, 90 feet or 80 feet deep at no cost. I personally think, well, my son, who's a Toyota dealer, has been wanting a substation out there for years. It's good for the neighborhood. So that's all I have to say. And you can have the space for 5 years for $1 a year.
All right, so Mr. Williams, and then we'll close out with Ms. Welch. If you can address the body so that they know who you are and what you're here for.
Thank you. I'm Pastor Randy Williams, Parkway Christian Fellowship. I moved here in 1992 from Kansas City, which, by the way, congratulations to the Chiefs. And I've lived in the Huffman area all this time. My house has been broken into. Our church has had things stolen from it. When I came in 92, we unlocked the door in the morning, left it unlocked all day. Small, medium, maybe just even minor observation of who was at the door. Today, it is locked with electronic lock, so someone has to get permission to come in. We escort our ladies to their cars after dark in the parking lot. when our children in daycare are on the playground, we're very cognizant of who is around. We were instrumental in asking the city to develop the old AT&T Southwestern building for East Precinct to come and move in the area. And we were excited when they consented to that and the process was underway and then funds were cut. That building still is not fully developed the way it was promised. Also, the police department, the precinct size was cut, so we have less from the city police. We would welcome the presence of our sheriff's office and substations, and it just makes sense that for $12,800 this could happen. I appreciate Mr. Sarah donating his part of it, and I think it makes sense for this commission to do it. I'm pleading with you, please, let's do this. Thank you very much.
Ms. Welch?
Good morning. My name is Gwendolyn Guster Welch, and I have been living in Echo Highlands, which is right near Queensbury, for 33 years. As was stated earlier, Queensbury is off the beaten path, simply because the businesses have left the area. Where they're talking about putting a substation at one point, we had a Food World, a Big B, a movie theater, restaurants. Now we have nothing. On the street where I live, to give you an example why I think this is a good project, our street, we live on a cul-de-sac. It's like a checkerboard. My street is my house is in the city of Birmingham. Next door is in the city of Center Point. The next house in the center of the cul-de-sac, that's the city of Birmingham. The next house is in the city of Center Point. When we have a problem, we call 911. Sometimes the sheriff will come, sometimes the police will come. But we need more cooperation. We are fearful. At 72 years old, I had to go and get a license to carry a pistol. That is not good. As someone said, when we moved over there, we could leave everything open. Now we cannot walk through the neighborhood. I'm sure that you all know a few weeks ago, less than a month ago, a person was killed at the Shell service station as you were entering into Winewood subdivision. Our economic development is poor because safety is a concern. My husband and I were coming home from church a few months ago, and I saw a car. And I said, Arthur, that car is not one of our cars, in our community. I called. It was a stolen vehicle. When during our neighborhood association meetings, and I am a constant attendee there, the police stated that we have an excessive amount of car break-in and car theft. We welcome this opportunity. This is a nonpartisan request. I just want safety. I would like to be safe in my community as all of the citizens throughout Jefferson County should feel safe. Please consider this for us, for our safety. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I understand you have a question, Mr. Chairman, as in Mr. Knight?
Yeah, you said the violent crimes victim unit, where is that now?
Right now, downtown headquarters, the unit has been expanded. We've had just 2 people that have been assisting, doing the job. This unit has been expanded, so.
And how many coordinators, when would you staff? Are you talking about using those coordinators to staff these substations?
Yes, yes, these coordinators.
Are you going to have deputies at these substations?
You'll have, I'm sure deputies will come through. This is for the coordinators. A lot of times you will have, I foresee that if you have somebody that say that there was a rape or some violent crime, they would bring them there so that they can, talk to them, assist them handle it. Yes.
Isn't that program grant funded?
Yeah, well, we have a grant.
Well, yeah. That's how much general fund dollars is coming out in support of that program?
Well, it's all
grant, isn't it?
Yeah, it's grant.
How long is the grant?
It's for 3 years.
3 years.
3 years. What at the end of those 3 years, what we're going to do?
We will have to fund it whereas we'll have to reapply for the grant.
And we keep calling it a substation. Is it going to be a true substation, or is this just going to be a place? You mentioned that it's going to be for this violent crime victims. I mean, you said the deputies will bring them in there, but what's the difference? I mean, we call it a substation.
I mean, you got
everything's in the name. And
yeah, you still have to have you need some computers, and then you need to get a network set up in there, to get a function copy machine, stuff like that. So, so it's maybe not a true substation, but where you can go to that business, where you can go and get your along with the court and get your reports done, get your things that they can handle their business and take care of.
Any other questions before I speak?
Are they both? Are they a substation or not a substation? I mean, that's what I've heard is substation.
I mean, is a substation, do they have holding cells?
Yes, I mean, it's not a true substation. I mean, it's a sub. A substation. Our office is a substation. Is it a true substation with all the?
Is it like Mount Island?
There you go. Yes. Yes. If you've ever seen Mount Island,
it's like one of our rural substations where they go do their reports and.
So it's basically an office.
There's normally a sheriff's presence there, or a car that normally stays there. It's kind of like to let everyone know that we're.
yeah. So you'll have people in that coordinator there, and you'll have
and one of these is in the city of Birmingham.
Both.
Both are in the city.
Is that right?
Chief, I mean, we've talked, Chief Smith is aware of this. You guys have talked to Chief Smith, that these are in his jurisdiction.
I have not been privy to all those conversations.
I'll speak whenever you're ready. As a matter of fact, the sheriff has spoken with Chief Smith, but I want to be clear that these are programs that are initiatives of the sheriff's department.
Where's the sheriff?
I'm sorry?
Where's the sheriff?
The sheriff is having to be a part of, it's not a meeting, but I think he had some kind of class or something that he told me this morning. Well, he told me that last week. And so it's not just he's doing it today. But let me say this just to be clear of what, first of all, that we are approving today, or seeking to approve, is an infrastructure grant. Okay? The lease itself, and I've already spoken to our county attorney about this, the law enables the sheriff to make those decisions on behalf of the sheriff's department. Therefore, the lease has already been signed by the sheriff, has also been signed by Mr. Sarah. The terms of the agreement is 5 years, $1, and I've also provided you all with a copy of this. Let me also say that I don't believe that it's ever the spirit of the sheriff's department, and certainly I know with myself that we're trying to leave anyone out. The reason why I grab hold to this opportunity is because of the fact that we have been promised some help like this for at least 7 years. And that's the reason why I asked Tony Sarah to come here today, so he can be able to say that for himself. He's offered it to the city of Birmingham. This is no new conversation. It's just the sheriff was willing to do it. And so the sheriff has had a conversation with the city of Birmingham, just because it's in the city of Birmingham, no different than it would be in Fairfield, Midfield, and any other part of the county that I have supported. However, this, let me be very clear that this is a program that is solely the sheriff. So that's why I wanted to, it seemed like it got to be a lot of wildfire talk about it without no one talking to me. Then you would have known exactly what was its purpose, what would be functioning out of it, and so that we're clear in terms of expectations. As a matter of fact, the community within itself, and I've always said this, We have very smart people, just like we do all over Jefferson County. They read, they understand what's going on. I thought personally that it would be a great idea, being that Jeff State is one of the places I received my education, and they need a presence there. And what better way than if it's at no cost to the county? Just happens to be located within the city, but is of no cost to the county. The only cost that the sheriff's office is having to have is water and light. And as a matter of fact, that's why I agreed, which I thought, and if you look in your packet, you want to look at it, either one of you. In your packet, you will see that the cost to provide computers and everything else is already laid out in this invoice. The amount of the invoice for both stations total is $22,619.80.
You have one of those, that's all I got.
No, that's, you can have that. But it's in your packet, and it's been totally signed off on, and I wanted to make sure that we were in agreement with that. That has been signed off on through the system, and so that everyone knows exactly what we're doing. So we're not infringing upon anyone. It's just the county, through the sheriff's office, is able to provide a service. Let me close on this note. I had a student to be killed at Huffman High School. It's unfortunate what surrounded that, but I had a student to be killed. Next to Huffman High School is county-owned, not county-owned, but they're county limits, unincorporated portions of Jefferson County, right next to Huffman. A lot of our students are found over there when they're skipping school. In addition to that, we've had Farrington, which of course Commissioner Knight and I had the pleasure of sitting in the office as the Housing Authority made us aware of another set of housing community that is now coming again toward the eastern area. I've also shared with Commissioner Knight, and I'm going to say it in this body, we've had a lot of alarm in the area just because of the fact that while we may be the drop-off point for the housing community, including Gate City, we've had Southtown and some other housing communities through the Housing Authority that they've been brought to the area, but nobody has given no type of support to try to help us. It wasn't with the intent. The sheriff thought it was a great idea. He sat down with Mr. Serra, shared what he thought would be good, and let me just be very candid to say this. Mr. Serra has committed a lot to the eastern area of town. Matter of fact, a portion of it is in your district, Mr. Knight, and Mr. Ammons in terms of economic development. I think you'll find this interesting. I went back into some of my old emails. I never trash anything as a council member, and I marked it off so you can be able to see it. But in 2013 is when this conversation started. But I want you to see this little, where I made a little sign, a little mark, because I know you definitely support the anti-poaching. But Trussville and Fultondale is where, who was courting Mr. Serra at the time. And the city of Birmingham recognized that. If you flip over to the other page, that's when the substation talk began to start happening even then. So that's why I pulled this, so that you all can be able to see it and know that, you know, this is in no way or attempt, and I'm going to give you one too, Mr. President, no shape or form to try to override anyone. I mean, this is no new conversation, and it's definitely not a new conversation with Mr. Serra. So if you all would oblige me, this is a community where I, as a commissioner, live. I live in this community. And that's the reason why nobody has to tell me what's happening over here. I'm fully vested. I'm here, and you can have it. And I just wanted to make you aware. One last document that I will give you just for your perusal is that I have also an email that dated back to 2013, where you will see that it started off being a conversation there as well. And I didn't want you to have to struggle with that information also. And so that's why I put a little mark by it so you could see, again, Queensbury and having a police substation was a part of that discussion.
Who was the discussion with?
That was with the city of Birmingham when I was a council member there.
Okay. And you weren't able to get one?
We're not granted that kind of authority as a council. All you can do is, at the time, the previous administrations had agreed to do it. And so, you know, as a council member, my job is to support it. And so, again, I'm glad that we got some clarity in terms that this will not be a substation, so we don't have to have heartburn on that. It will be an office that the sheriff's office will utilize for victims of violent crime. And we've had plenty of violent crime and victims thereof in that area. And I would, you know, ask that you pull up some of these news stories. I don't think Alan was on this beat, but all he has to do is go back to the newsroom. I want to say about 2 years ago, there was a young woman in front of the housing, the set of apartments right next door to Huffman High School. And this young woman under the age of 25, I think she was somewhere between her early 20s and her boyfriend, and they called it a murder-suicide because he killed her and then turned around and killed himself. And the city of Birmingham couldn't do anything about it. That young woman was killed by her boyfriend right there by the school. And so it's a lot of instances that I can bring up, but that's not the issue before us. It's only I'm asking for your support to support an infrastructure grant that I've always supported you all on. It's just an infrastructure grant. That's it. The lease has already been signed. The sheriff has already agreed to do it.
All right, this is a request for substation. I think this one talks about a substation. Mr. Sarah said he was thinking of substation, and now it's not a substation. I guess my question is, where is Birmingham on this?
Well, again,
I mean, because we're going to put substations in the city limits of Birmingham.
well, he just told you that, Joe, we're not going to struggle over. If I said it incorrectly, then let me apologize.
Okay.
But the sheriff's office just told you what it is. It's an office for the sheriff to be able to use through his department so that they can be able to have the victims of violent crime program to run in it.
Okay.
Is that grant any kind of coordination with Birmingham? I mean, violent crime doesn't know municipal boundaries. It's just the sheriff's department.
You know, I applaud the effort. Commissioner, I think that it's a grand thought and a good idea. I think that we probably, as a commission, need to sit down with the sheriff and the chief of police to make sure that they are coordinating and doing things the way they need to, because the last thing that we can do as a commission is put resources in a police jurisdiction where it's A, maybe not wanted, or and B, we're hindering the ability to police those unincorporated areas which are our primary responsibility.
Mr. President?
You know, besides that, I support.
Mr. President, let me say this. That's why it's good for us to have a clear understanding in terms of the use of what is being programmed to come out of this building. It is not a task force. It's not a substitute for a police force. It's a victims of crime office space. That's it. Their purpose is not to go out to fight crime. It is to provide additional space where persons who are victims of violent crimes can be able to have somewhere that they can go and see someone from the sheriff's office for assistance. That's why I want to make sure of what we're saying, so that even if I have miscommunicated or there's a misunderstanding of the term that I use, be clear that Tony Sarah knew before today what exactly that is being asked. The people who have spoken this morning are within proximity. This church is one of the largest churches that is right there on the Parkway, and this pastor lives in the district. Matter of fact, live right behind me. And at a time when we have always, and he knows this, have always worked to try to put money, which I did as a council member, put money into the East Police Precinct. The East Police Precinct is basically strapped. So any kind of law enforcement that could help. We've seen the record number of domestic violence escalate in Jefferson County in a way that is never done before. And we've experienced that. So that's why I said I don't want us to trip up on any kind of wording. The office space is available. It's at $1. I'm willing to for our district to be able to do that just as I've done with other areas within Jefferson County. And I do want to say this again. This is not a crime fighting type of programming that's going in these office facilities.
Is it going to have the sheriff's logo on the building?
My understanding, that may possibly be the case. I don't know. But here's what I will say, Commissioner Knight.
Yeah.
Rather than us trying to find a way not to do it, I'd like to have assistance to try to find a way to do it.
I would love to do that, and as soon as we get the sheriff and the police chief saying, hey, this is...
But this is not a...
As of yesterday, it's my understanding the police chief did not know about this. So, I mean, and that may be hearsay. I don't know. Until we hear from the two law enforcement agencies, because we can ill afford to have our two law enforcement agencies having issues about you're coming into my backyard or this is not your jurisdiction and that sort of thing. And if this, and I wouldn't have any problems if this was, Mr. Sarah's property was in an unincorporated piece of the county. But until I get the clarity that these two law enforcement agencies are with this, because when I talked to the sheriff the other night, he said, hey, I'm trying to develop a task force. Okay. That was in response to, what do you think about
So
this issue?
then if you want me to be very candid with you, Commissioner Knight,
I would love
and that's the only way I know how to be.
Okay, but today,
The
this is
reason
the first time I'm hearing this is a police or crime victims unit.
And you know what? And you know why that is?
Up until the other day, this was a substation was all I was hearing. And that came from you.
It absolutely did.
Okay.
And the reason why it changed, because the mandate changed. And when the sheriff said this is what he would prefer to do,
okay,
I complied with the sheriff. And that's all that I can do. The objective, Commissioner, is to at least provide some additional help in this area. It is not...
Help in what way? We're not going to fight crime out of here, right?
You will be dealing with crime, except it will be victims of violent crime.
Okay.
And let me do say this. I'm not trying to, I don't think the role of any commissioner would be to tell the sheriff what he needs to do.
It would be the role of the sheriff to tell the commissioner what he wants to do, yes.
And he did tell me that. And
The commission.
Well, you got his representative that comes every commission meeting.
Okay.
No, this is nothing new.
Okay.
They come to every meeting.
Okay.
They give us a report. This is nothing new.
Okay, this is new though.
No, what is new?
This proposal.
Well,
it changed since.
It's not a new proposal. It's not a new proposal. But let me just say this. I have never come against any infrastructure grant that any of us have ever presented to be able to do anything in our districts. I never have, and I never have put you all under some kind of excuse me, are we having two meetings?
We may be.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm trying to present to you. It would be helpful if at least you give me the courtesy to listen. You don't have to agree, but at least give me the courtesy to listen.
Well, I was getting a clarification.
But a clarification,
What was going on, and that's fine.
But probably that clarity may be shared with your colleagues if you would just allow.
You probably wouldn't want that, but
No,
let's just go ahead.
I don't mind. I don't have anything to hide. Let me just be very clear. I am taking the sheriff's lead. And if the sheriff says that he has decided away from the task force that this is the vein in which he chooses to operate, I have no problem with it. All I've asked is tell me what you need to support, and this invoice has been provided of the level of support that they needed.
Well, we mean, is general services here? All right, if we have a lease, even though we pay very little, who maintains the building? Because there was some unanswered cost in here on one of your sheets, and I'm just asking the question. Who maintains the building? Mr. County Attorney?
It is my understanding that this is a lease with the sheriff. So there is
Okay.
no, the county assumes no responsibility for that building or for its, the lease or the upkeep.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that's all.
Any other questions?
What you said earlier, find a way to make it work. I agree with Commissioner Knight. I'd like to hear from the sheriff and that his conversation with the police chief is there. And also to Commissioner Stevens' point, it's a 3-year grant, it's a 5-year lease. I'd like to understand what the sheriff's planning. I mean, is this eventually going to be a budget request down the road? Just to understand what his long-term plans are. If he's not going to get the grant and wants to continue the program, what does that look like?
So let me also say this too.
And also this was on the agenda for discussion, and so I thought this was all about discussion.
No, as a matter of fact, the only reason why it was placed on the agenda for discussion is because we were waiting for the sheriff to sign off on the receipt of this infrastructure agreement, and just so that we can have a place on the agenda. That is the reason why it is noted as such, but for no other reason than that. Let me also say this as well, as relates to this infrastructure grant. I believe we're trying to forecast a problem before it becomes a problem. In 3 years, all of us will be up for re-election or whatever the case may be. It's a 5-year lease, and it can be terminated at any given time. If in fact the sheriff's office deemed that they need to take or move into a different direction, I'm sure that Mr. Sarah, and you can ask him, he's sitting right here, he would oblige. But for us to just say we're not going to do anything on an infrastructure grant, I want to be very clear. This is all that I'm asking for as a commissioner. The approval of an infrastructure grant. The program itself is not just a Birmingham program. It is run by the sheriff's department. That's it. That's the reason why if it were to take on another aspect, then I would agree that you're saying that there are other components that need to be had, but that's not the case. It is a program that is run totally by the sheriff's department. All our area is willing to do is to donate the space at no cost. The infrastructure dollars will come from our district, and so it's at no cost to anyone. Are there any other questions? I entertain a motion at this time for this item to be considered, please. Do we have a motion? Okay, so since we don't have a motion, we'll move on with the agenda, and hopefully there will be some resolve as it relates to this. I mean, is there anyone that wants to see how we move forward? Since you're interested in moving forward, you're saying that you need to hear from the sheriff? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm hearing from the sheriff and the police chief, yeah. This is
Okay.
two law enforcement agencies in a jurisdictional issue.
Do two agencies right now run this program? Who runs the program?
All right, listen.
the sheriff's office runs the program.
Okay.
And you saying that you need to hear from Birmingham. I'm just only
If
asking.
we're gonna put a sheriff's substation, victims crime unit, whatever we do with the sheriff's logo in the city limits of Birmingham, of the police jurisdiction of Birmingham, then we need, those two entities need to have that understanding, and if everybody's okay with it, I promise you, I give you the money.
That's the bottom line, dude. You can't do that in a municipality without getting the blessings and support of that municipality. Because we're in this together, we've got to work together. And I don't believe that they understood it, and you were talking about as far as the substation. Get it all together, and if it's indeed Birmingham that's approved of it, you'll have my support.
I agree. That's all.
And if they have a problem with it or an objection, then what?
Well, then we go from there, but let's.
Well, what
at
is
least-
going from there?
Well, I want to hear what they have to say. If they've got a problem with it, why is your
So-
problem? Why, then
So
we can
then-
move
So then here's
to the
what,
unincorporated part of
so
county.
here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna present this item again on the agenda, and it will make it to the agenda. And then what I'm gonna ask is that the sheriff be present. I will ask the sheriff to also invite the chief of police to be
That
present.
would be awesome.
Hold on. And if, for any reason, he is not permitted, because unlike the sheriff who is elected, the chief of police of Birmingham is appointed. And if he is not granted that permission, because they meet at the council on Tuesdays, if he is not granted that, then I want us to look back at this item again, because it has already been stated, this is a sheriff's department program. And
we hadn't heard from the sheriff.
Hold on. You've heard from the sheriff because you heard from his staff.
No, I haven't heard from
And
the sheriff.
anytime we've had any other discussion, Commissioner Knight, it has always been, in the absence of the sheriff,
Sure.
the sheriff's representatives who come to every meeting has been permitted to speak. And do let me say this, because I'm adamant about it. I will give only one last thing in closing. I remember clearly last year there was a young man who was killed getting off the interstate, Joe, off Parkway East. We had random shootings that were taking place where folk were shooting at random. And hopefully you remember that. This took place in 2019, where folk were literally scared to drive between Parkway East of Birmingham up to the city limits of Centerpoint and through Centerpoint. And do you remember that? And all I can tell you is that you cannot force law enforcement to do anything. As a commissioner, all we can do is ask.
And as I recall, both entities responded to that incident.
Both
Sheriff
entities.
and
Hold on.
Birmingham.
Hold on.
And Trustwise.
Hold on.
So,
As a matter of fact, let's be clear. When it first started, if it were not for the actions of the sheriff's department, which my neighbor happens to be in the county while I live in the city limits of Birmingham, if it were not for the fact that the sheriff took it upon his own department to get as involved as they did, we lived in terror for over several months because of the fact we didn't know who was shooting, we didn't know why, and by the time they had come over into your district, they were in Homewood, and they were shooting at people, okay? And whoever wants to get on board to help protect the citizens, that's what needs to be done. But at the end of the day, it cannot, and I plead with you, this cannot become political when I and other folks who have just spoken this morning got to live there. I can't expect an anti-poaching to be respected, and you got the owner of a business who has offered at no cost for at least 7 years, and you got the paperwork here. I've given you the emails. He can't force the city to do anything. All he can do is to say, I'm trying to remain committed to the community. Can you at least help if I provide a free space? And while we're trying to figure out what not to do, there are people who are resting on the shoulders of my representation because of the fact that it's been long overdue. So what may appear to be overnight to one person, it's been 7 years, and that's why I made sure I provided these emails, so that you would know that there has always been a cry for help on that side of town. It is unfortunate that as we keep being inundated with Section 8, love the people who are on the program. That's not my issue. But as long as we keep emptying out of the housing communities and nobody is trying to properly educate persons who would like to move into a better area, something you and I talked about, Commissioner Knight, which, as a matter of fact, they said that they told you that they spoke to the sheriff, and you said, okay. I said, okay. And what did the sheriff say? They didn't speak to me. So that's another set of 22 families getting ready to relocate out of the housing project and to the very area that I'm talking about. It's just up the road.
Right down from our substation in
Right.
the courthouse.
And guess what? And that substation right now is being inundated, and the sheriff can prove this, and Rodney should have the numbers. We have a set of apartments, Valley Brook Apartments, they having a shootout frequently, to the degree it is out of control for the city of Birmingham. No, as a matter of fact, but the sheriff is having to go down there.
Is it simple?
No, that's Birmingham. So this is what I'm trying to tell you.
I understand. There's a problem in increasing.
And if it wasn't for the sheriff, in fact, the sheriff told me yesterday, this portion of Jefferson County, and Rodney, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the most highly used area for the sheriff department because of the types of crimes that are committed. That's what the sheriff told me yesterday.
And the sheriff is already hollering he ain't got enough folks.
Well, guess what, Joe? If he doesn't have enough people, then our job is to help facilitate the citizens who are dependent on us.
Well, who's going to be at the substations?
They've already told you that it's going to be the personnel that they have for the victims against violent crimes. That's who's going to be there.
How many people do you have?
We've got 4. And then there's going to be.
I thought you said there were 2.
Well, we had 2, but with 6 altogether. But we'll have 4. 2 we already had.
And so now the victims, if it's in a West End, there's a victim of crime, they're going to have to go out to the East Precinct or the East Substation to make a report.
No.
Okay. All right, I'm done.
That's it for my report. Thank you.
Go to the Community Development and Human Resource Services Committee, we have Cook Green.
Yes, sir. This is the contract that went out for bids. Duncan and Thompson was the low bidder. This is on the 6th floor for the pharmacy. New standards have gone into effect December 31st, 2019 to upgrade the pharmacy up there. Also, the contract is we've made it so it can be assigned to the healthcare authority once we transition over.
Move the item. Second.
Been made and seconded, all in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Department of Community Services and Workforce Development, CDBG.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Hamburg, Brooks will make a presentation.
Did we have this already?
Yes.
Mr. President, how much you address this one in particular because this is our project, so Daniel
That's District 2.
Yeah.
I can either do this and I'll do that.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Check. She gave you something.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
Are you sure?
I am. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to do a brief overview of the federal state and local compliance requirements that we have to implement our CDBG and CDBG DR projects. And so this will give you an indication of all of the regulatory things that we have to do to submit and stay in compliance with our projects. First, I want to begin with a brief overview of our HUD Entitlement Consortium. It's all of Jefferson County with the exception of Birmingham, Bessemer, Lakeshore, the town of County Line, Somerton, and the portions of Alena that's in Jefferson County. Of course, our HUD funds cannot be spent in these particular jurisdictions. I want to begin by talking about the eligibility of the CDBG program. In order to be eligible for a CDBG project, you must meet one of three national objectives. One, the project must benefit predominantly low and moderate income people, being 51%. The project can be an urgent need. So, for example, if you have an area that's unserved with water and they're using private wells that are contaminated and it causes an imminent health threat, you can actually use our CDBG funds to address that issue. Over in Fairfield, we're addressing a fire truck because of the shortage of fire trucks in that jurisdiction. So urgent needs is also one of the CDBG national objectives. Elimination of slum and blight, those would be areas like abandoned towns where businesses have left. You can actually use the CDBG funds to go in and revitalize those areas. How do we determine LMI or low and moderate income? This is particularly the national objective that we use on most of our projects. And that can be determined by a HUD census tract, where basically we go in and define the area, and it will tell us if that area is at least 51% low and moderate income. There are some areas that are like, for example, 49%, and we can challenge the census by doing a door-to-door survey. Now, of course, senior citizens are considered by HUD to be what's called limited clientele, so they're automatically assumed to be low and moderate income. So we can do things like senior centers and expansion of senior centers, and we don't have to do anything. They automatically meet the qualifications to be eligible. Sometimes people get interested in when we do these door-to-door surveys, what do we mean by defining low and moderate incomes? As you can see there, it's based on how many people in the household. This is the latest income survey that we received from HUD. So as long as they're not over these bottom numbers, they meet the criteria as being low and moderate income based on household size. Basically, the next level is 50% of low and moderate income, level of 74,000, which is the median household income. It just means they're poorer than the people that are at 80%.
Will they be more eligible to get funding?
No, it's just really data that HUD uses just to define
Okay.
what level of poverty they're at. And of course, at 30%, they would be at extreme levels of poverty. Ineligible uses of CDBG funds, you cannot use these funds for city halls, police stations, or anything that's a general conduct of government. However, if there's some type of architectural barriers, you can use the CDBG funds. So for example, if you have a city hall that needs some type of ADA compliance, the CDBG funds can be used in that situation. It cannot be used for political activities and for general operation of maintenance expenses.
What about for voting? Is that political activity?
No. Now, they could do that. Well, you know what? I don't know.
Don't guess.
My answer to that is no.
Right, man.
Well, I believe Terrence may have saw some of that when they had to get their ramp in ADA compliance.
Yes, that is.
And we happened to vote at Terrence City Hall.
Okay.
So that was subsequent benefit of.
That's correct.
that.
Okay.
That is correct. These are the eligible activities: housing rehabilitation. We do a significant amount of that. Infrastructure, water, sewer, drainage, parks, things of that nature. We do a lot of those. Public facilities. Public services would be those nonprofit organizations that benefit predominantly low and moderate income persons. Demolition, and of course, acquisition. You can use these funds to acquire property for our projects. So I want to start really kind of talking about the time frame. So as you all know, we have what's called an open season, which leads into the development of our annual action plan. We typically start our open season in September, and that ends at the end of January the following year. Once we receive all the applications, which we just received some for this year a few days ago, we take all of those applications and determine which ones meet the eligible criteria based on what I just explained. So are they at least 51% low and moderate income? Is it an urgent need type application? Those type of things. We actually compile those applications. We then send them down to the county manager, and then we then speak with you all about how we move forward with developing our annual action plan.
Here's my question. In the applications, once you get them all in the bank, it says, then the approved applications go to the commissioners. Now, do we get to see the whole list and then the list that is approved, or do we just get a edited list of?
No. You would get a full list. It'll be broken down by district, but you'll have all of the eligible applications submitted that meet the eligibility requirements for all 5 of the districts. So after we submit our annual action plan in August, we typically, we're supposed to receive our HUD grant agreements in October, but lately we've been receiving those about the latter part of November. So a lot of people that apply in January are wondering what's going on in October. We're just getting the money to fund those applications as a part of these HUD grant agreements. Continuing on with the HUD grant agreements and the cooperation agreements, again, once we receive the HUD grant agreements, then we have to execute what's called a cooperation agreement with the consortium method. So if it's Fairfield or if it's Centerpoint or whoever it is, we have to get a cooperation agreement that basically just talks about what the requirements are to move forward with the CDBG grant. That typically takes us about 45 days for us to get it back in and get it through our approval process. I really want to point this out. A lot of our projects do not require acquisitions, but we do have, in some cases, where we have to acquire property. So I want to go by step what we have to do. First, we have to identify the property owners, and then once we identify them, we have to send them a brochure entitled "When a Public Agency Acquires Your Property," so that they know their rights as it relates to a public agency acquiring the property. The issue becomes this right here: getting the property owners to agree to the sale. If you got a bunch of heirs and they're fussing back and forth, this can take as much as months, and in some cases it's taken up to a year for us to actually get this piece done. Once this is done, we have to procure a licensed appraiser and a review appraiser. HUD requires the review appraiser to come in and actually review what the initial appraiser has done to make sure that we're coming up with a fair market value. We have to go through the approval of the appraisal contracts. Since there is a similar job class in the merit system, this sometimes has to go through the personnel board. Then we establish the fair market value. The review appraiser reviews the initial appraisal. We offer the fair market value to the property owners, and then we have to close with the contract of sale to the property owner. This typically doesn't happen, but a lot of these projects that have been delayed have to go through this extensive process. This can take, worst case scenario, 1 to 1.5 years.
What about eminent domain? Do we have that authority if somebody says, I don't know, it's a water project, and we got to get a piece of land, and they say we don't want to sell?
Technically, we could do that, but we don't normally get into eminent domain.
Well, hopefully not, yeah.
Yeah, it further delays the project.
Okay.
So, before we can start the required environmental review process, the site has to be identified. So, if we know what the site is, that's good, but if we have to acquire the site, all that stuff that I just talked about has to be done before we can start the environmental review process. We're required to get concurrence from 4 different agencies: the Alabama Historical Commission, the Regional Indian Tribes, Fish and Wildlife, and the Corps of Engineers. Typically, the Corps of Engineers if it's like a drainage project. And by law, these agencies have 30 days to respond. The time can be longer if one of these agencies requires us to take an additional step, like do an archaeology assessment or something. Okay, so I want to talk about in the case where we have to do an archaeology assessment, because we've actually had to do this on the Pinson Road project, on the Martintown Storm Shelter, as well as Michael Storm Shelter. In these cases, those projects was close to an archaeology site, so we had to go in and hire an archaeologist. This requires us to do a contract with that archaeologist. Typically, this is a small purchase, so we just can get 3 quotes and go with the lowest bid. And then it takes the archaeologist on average about 30 days to do the study. Once we get the study back, we send it back, in this case, to the Historical Commission. And it only takes them an additional 21 days for them to issue a letter of concurrence. We have to have a letter of concurrence before we can complete our environmental. That typically, if we have to get some type of study done, that could be 96 days.
What's an example of a historical issue, other than maybe like an arrowhead or something like that?
Well, let's talk about Pinson.
Okay.
The Historical Commission came back and said that site was close to an archaeology site. But when we had the study, we found out that there was no concerns, and so we sent that back to the Historical Commission, and they moved forward in giving us the concurrence that we have to have as a part of our HUD requirements. We also have to comply with the regional Indian tribes. Some of these tribes were displaced, and so these are the tribes that we have to get concurrence from. The Muscogee Creek Nation, the Alabama Coushatta tribe of Texas, the Coushatta tribe of Louisiana, the Alabama Quarset tribe of Tom. Now, typically, we don't have any issues with them unless the project is close to Turkey Creek or Cahaba River. So in most cases, we don't have any issues with getting concurrence letter. But still, they have 30 days to respond. If they don't respond in 30 days, we just put a note to the file and move forward.
And y'all know how to contact all these people? Most of them I hadn't even heard of.
Yes, sir. We did.
Wow.
We've been doing this for years, and we have all the contacts.
I can understand the creeks, but wow.
Fish and Wildlife at Martintown Storm Shelter that's under construction right now have a special species of bats. So we have to make some accommodations for that. So that can take an additional 30 days to get that done. We have a project over on Murphy Road where there's an endangered clover. So Fish and Wildlife, we have to make sure we get their compliance to finish our environmental review.
It's amazing how many projects bats stop.
Yes. So
I didn't see any bats.
So, yeah, and out there in Martintown, basically, it was either no construction or we couldn't cut down the trees where they have to.
Right. In a certain month of the year, you can't
exactly
do it
right.
too.
That's
That's weird.
exactly right. So then, after we do all of that, we have to procure our professional services because we don't want to get the county in any type of liability until we know for sure that we're able to move forward. So typically, we'll do a RFP or RFQ. That normally takes about 21 days. Once the proposals come in, we rate those proposals, and that's about a 14-day process. Whoever rates the highest, we typically will send them a fee letter. That's about 10 days, and then we prepare the agreement to be approved. And all that takes about 45 days to go through our internal process. Again, a lot of our projects don't have to go through the personnel board. Some of them do, but just it could be a little longer if the agreement had to go to the personnel board. But that typically doesn't happen on our public facilities and infrastructure projects. So then we're going to finish up the environmental review. If it's a public facility, we're required to do a phase 1 assessment. So that consultant that has been hired, that's included in his contract. That's the first thing that consultant will do. That takes about 30 days. Then the staff completes the environmental review, and then we're required to run 2 environmental ads. One is a finding of no significant impact. The other one is a request for release of funds, and there's a 15-day comment period that we have to adhere to. Then we send it over to HUD, and then HUD also has a 15-day comment period. HUD is averaging about 40 days to get that information back to us, and so what they basically send us back is a request for release of funds, which basically authorizes us to move forward with the construction phase. Design and bidding phase. Some projects do require a survey that takes about 21 days. And I'm glad that we do that, because we did have a project where later somebody came and said that we had gotten over on their property. We pulled out the survey and approved double line. So those are required as needed. Then we come up with the schematic design and review. That's about 45 days in consultation with whoever we have funded. So they're having input on how we design the project within our budget. The design phase takes about 60 days. Final design approval, of course, if it's in the county, has to come back and be reviewed by our team, Development Services and Road and Transportation. Then if it's in the city, their inspections department would have to give approval. If it's a public facility where food is going to be served, we also have to get compliance from the health department. So that normally takes about 60 days. We develop the construction documents, which is 15 days. Advertising and bidding is 30 days to be in compliance with the state bid law. We get a certified bid tab, a letter of intent to award, execute the contract, and then we do a pre-construction conference and then issue the notice to proceed. It could take 337 days just for that piece. One of the things that I want to tell you that we've been dealing with, but is starting to improve, is we've been having a lot of high bids come in on our construction project. A lot of that had to do with highway construction. The contractors were busy either on that and other projects. In some cases, we were only getting 1 to 3 bids on each of our projects. And so when our bids come over budget, HUD doesn't give us any more money. So we don't have to negotiate with that contractor if HUD says so, or we have to go back and redesign it. So that takes a lot of additional time. But I will say that we've had some construction bids come in recently within our budget. So I think we hopefully have seen the end of our bids having those type of issues. On substantial amendments, we brought a few of those through. So if we have some money left over from projects, we can move the money around to other projects that need it. I think we talked about that in a couple of committee meetings ago. In all those instances, we can't do that on our own, and we have to give the public a 30-day comment period. So we have to prepare a substantial amendment, write it in the paper, and give the public 30 days to announce. Once that's done, it comes back to the commission for approval.
How is substantial amendment defined?
Over 25, so we're making a change 25%.
Okay.
So here's just the days. This is if we have to do all of these things, but in most cases we don't have to do all of these things. But we have to do all of these things. It could take about 1,189 days to get a project implemented. But for example, typically, let me go to the next slide. Typically, we don't have to do the acquisition of land. We don't have to, in some cases, have the historical commission or one of the other concurring agencies come back and request additional information. In some cases, we don't have to do surveys. So that's 542 days that you can take from the 1,189 days, and that's 640 days. So about 1.7 months if we don't have any unforeseen issues. So I want to, after I've told you all of these things that we have to do to comply with the state and federal regs, I want to talk about projects that we completed. We completed 8 storm shelters. So you can see those for yourself. North Smithfield is expected to be finished in about, I'll say a few weeks will be done with that. Mike Dog Chapel is within 45 days of being done. The Hueytown storm shelter is about 3 or 4 weeks ahead of schedule. Warrior Storm Station number 2 is under construction and on schedule. And Fultondale, we expect it to be done by April or May of this year. Here's some more recently completed project. Rosedale Sidewalk 6 is completed. Fairfield Sidewalks 4 is completed. The Fairfield Fire Station bid has been received. We're waiting on the bonds and insurance. That bid did come in within our budget. The Brighton Community Center has been bid and should be underway shortly. I will say on our resurfacing projects, we're going to be working with Roads and Transportation. We're going to allow them to do this work and save us some money so we can get more resurfacing work done. The 2018 resurfacing project should be under construction soon and not too far behind during the environmental phase. So as soon as we get the request for release of funds from HUD, we can go ahead and start moving forward with these other resurfacing projects for Brighton and Lipscomb. The Lipscomb Storm Shelter is about to begin advertising for construction, as well as Center Point Senior Center expansion. The Senior Center Cedar Point Fire District. The cooperation agreement is in minute track, so we'll be before you shortly. The Graysville Ballpark Light Project is under construction, and Edgewater Park expansion is also under construction. So I'd like to conclude just by saying this. We have to do all of this stuff to make sure that we keep the county in a position where they don't have to pay any of these federal funds back to the federal government. So we have, the whole time that I've been here, which is 15 years, and I think the time before that, Jefferson County has never had to pay HUD back anything for misusing funds or not complying with these things that we talked about. But I will tell you that there have been jurisdictions all across the country that has had to pay HUD back for not complying with these things that we talked about.
Is there a statute of limitations?
Well, here's the thing, as far as the information, the time we can implement the
Or
project.
having to, no, have it, if the feds can come back on you and say, oh, well, you didn't do X, Y, and Z, you gotta pay us back.
Well, they can come at any time. I don't know if there's a statute of limitations, but typically what happens, we get monitored, and typically if you get monitored and there's no finding, you're typically good to go. But if there's just some suspicion that you're doing something not in compliance with these regs or doing something suspicious with the money, OIG can come in and do a thorough investigation, and that has happened in many cases across the country. So I will say, I just want to say that we take our time and make sure we implement these projects right. I know they take some time, but it's federal funds, but a lot of federal requirements, a lot of state requirements, and then we got the health department and all these other local compliance issues. But we are driven to make sure that we put these projects on the ground, put them on the ground where the county's not in jeopardy of paying these funds back.
Final question, when will we be getting this? I think the deadline just ended.
Yes, sir.
When will we be getting a
So we've
list
received
of-
the applications. I've already received a list of the projects, but we haven't done the assessments. But we'll be getting that to the county manager and work on it.
And when will we get them? Never mind. He said, how much can you pay? 1,500, good.
We'll get it to you soon.
Thank you.
Is there any questions?
So those jurisdictions that have to send the money back, does that grant money become available for projects that you can apply for, or?
No, we're HUD entitlement county, and of course Birmingham is
So
HUD.
it's a standard rate.
So, yeah, the only time we get additional money, and it's a formula grant, Hoover came into our consortium, so that drives up our population, so it equates to a little more money. But when they, some jurisdiction pays the money or does something wrong, it doesn't really fall back to us. We just get our standard allocation based on that formula grant.
What's the outlook with Congress this year as far as the CDBG grant?
Well, for years they've been talking about cuts, but we've actually seen level funding and a slight increase in our funding. So
NACO is projecting a slight increase in the budgets.
That's correct.
Times are good.
So let me just conclude by saying this. These storm shelters are in place. These 8 storm shelters that are in place. You're going to have 3 coming online within 45 days. We're making Jefferson County safe. With the general fund portion that we're going to do, this is going to be one of the safest counties as it relates to disasters.
I had a question come up this past week about a senior citizen center that we built. Once we build it, whose senior citizen is it if it's right in the middle of a city?
Okay, I think the one you're referring to is Kimberly.
Well, I wasn't mentioning any names.
But anyway, that project started right when I got here in 2004. The county did not transfer the deed to them, but that can be done. Typically, we convey those projects to that entity.
Yeah.
So about 15 years ago, that did not happen, but I made provisions for that to take place.
Oh, okay, goodness, okay.
That's all I have.
Good job, thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks.
All right, Lauren Oliver's got made something each
I'd like to point out for the Commission's benefit that as I watched Dr. Hamilton's presentation, so there's an issue of timeliness in terms of how these things are processed. From the person board's perspective, these types of contracts qualify for pre-bid approval. So rather than having that time frame protracted in the continuum, when we have information available, we can apply for a pre-bid approval, which means that you basically cut out the time that you project for the boards of the
But it's a they had to.
pre-bid approval.
But
Meaning,
that-
you know what the project is, you
Yeah.
know the parameters, the projected costs, all the assumptions. We get that information and provide a pre-bid approval. As long as when you issue the contract, it's consistent with that, there's no issue.
This is, I'll give you an example. We submitted the Duncan and Thompson Pharmacy Board, and they approved it one day because it was through it had gone before the Personnel Board when we issued the architect's contract. So that helps by doing the pre-bid, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jefferson County Juvenile Justice Task Force.
We're gonna reschedule.
Gonna reschedule them.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have a community grant, PS serving veterans in the community, $2,500. Have a motion? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. We have a resolution, the historical jail cell preservation resolution directing the county manager to explore and present a recommendation and plan to the commission in furtherance of the desire expressed in a previous resolution to preserve the historic jail cells on the 7th floor. I believe Commissioner Scales has been working with the county manager's office, and I'm going to refer to Commissioner Scales to begin this and county manager's office to finish.
Well, as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do, Mr. President, because I really do appreciate this resolution, I'm going to offer at the appropriate time a substitute resolution regarding this item. And Joseph, if you could go ahead and bring us this board. I want to thank the county manager and all the staff that has been working on this particular project. It came through Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, and I thank everybody, really the commission, for voting in favor of us having it. If you haven't had the opportunity to go on the 7th floor, I would encourage you to do so. All of the remnants, do want to thank my staff for the work that they did. Was designed by my staff. So I'd like for you all to go up on the 7th floor. Have any of you all been on the 7th floor? You been there? Should you go?
All of them, yeah?
Absolutely. So my staff put that together, and so it was those are donated banners, and it didn't cost us anything. So as it relates to guidelines, one of the things that the county manager and I talked about, which he can really go over this portion himself, because that's more operational. But at the appropriate time, Mr. President, I've already given you all a copy of the resolution that I was, provided from the county manager's office, and then we can move on at that time. So the board, Joseph, is getting ready. You got it?
Right by you.
Oh, okay. So then the county manager, he can explain this board in such a way that you all can be able to look at it.
All right, let me first say that the 7th floor is a warehouse. It's also, we have all of the air handling units up there on the 7th floor. And that 7th floor, as you all know, is locked off from the public. We're going to keep it this way. What we want to do is, and I have a tentative, as far as looking at the facility now. This is a draft tentative guideline, and some of the issues that we need to deal with is our fire and safety issues. As far as fire exits, I know that step going up into the jail is out of code. We'll need to put a ramp in there, and then also the and I don't know what we have to do. We need to, general service needs to spend some time up there. We need to determine what we need to do in order to make it safe for the public. But also, this is a draft of you coming off the elevators and going through here. We'll have to put a ramp here going up to look through the jails and come back out this way. We need to have some sort of barricade on this end and some sort of barricade on this end to keep the public from going into the areas that they don't need to be going into. So we got to address that issue. And the fire exits are past the barricade. And so we need to look at that issue also. So my recommendation is until we determine, and then how many people can we bring up here safely at a time? The fire marshal will have to determine that fact. So there's still a lot of work that we have to do. This is a tentative agreement, but also we will continue to work with due diligence on what can we do in the future, long term, with the jail cell and the facility that's up there. And I know there's been some discussion of possibly dismantling it and moving it to a location that's more acceptable to the public. We'll look at that aspect of it also.
So while we at this, one of the things that I had committed to doing is if we needed any funding to go with us to provide for the ramp, or I won't commit to provide the cost associated with moving it, but I was going to say, if you look at it, it does say about RSVP, and then Mr. Patel has said that he would work to see how we work out that reservation. And so then you would know how many folk that you can have that can come and go after the fire marshal is given, their approval. So hopefully we'll be looking at that very soon. But if we are ready, Mr. President, then I can, which has already been approved by the law department, can offer a substitute motion as relates to the resolution concerning this matter.
Sure. We can hear. Well, I guess we need to take this motion first, don't we?
Which one?
The one that,
The one on the agenda?
So you're saying substitute this, or let's do both of them separately, because they're both really kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Moving forward with this, and then
Number 2
still
came from
directing to look.
Tyson.
Right.
And I don't feel comfortable saying anything until we actually voted on this, or someone offered.
No, actually, we can, well, here's what we can do. We can move on this resolution, and then I can just offer an amendment, because the one that I'm presenting gives more specific in terms of reservations and the times, and it's a little bit more specific as approved by the law department. So then we can do it in that way. So if we move this, I'm just going to ask that we entertain an amendment to read or to add the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and the Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Just give more specific details.
That'll be great. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
For number 2, resolution.
With the amendment.
With the amendment. And I'm fine.
And this is we'll have the tentative guidelines, yes. But in order to move forward, we've got some work to do.
Got some work to do, I understand. All right, we have a motion.
Second.
With
the amendments.
With the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right.
And I want to thank Commissioner Scales' staff who worked on the board and did that for us, and helped me with the tentative guidelines.
Thank you.
We had Administrative and Infrastructure Committee, Roads and Transportation, and Engineering, Design, and Technology, Milwaukee Chapel.
Move 1 through 6. I move 1 through 6.
Oh, 1 through 6 has been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Move 1 through 13.
County Attorney, 1 through 13, we have a motion. Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the sheriff has no ayes. County Manager.
No other items?
No other items.
No, we're going to be working on this project on the 7th floor, and I'll keep you updated as we move along. And determine what, the short term, I think the guidelines are good. Long term, we'll need to determine, the commission will have to make that decision, what we do moving forward. And we'll give you all the options.
Okay, that'll be great. Had a District 3 other business, community grants for Matador Youth Athletics, McCall Youth Athletics Association. They had a telephone pole that snapped and they needed to replace it. Had a community grant for Hoover Service Club and a community grant for the Leadership Hoover, which is doing a good job over there also.
Move for 1, 2, 3.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I have one item for new business that I think is time sensitive. I don't believe it's going to cause anyone any heartburn or problem. It's a resolution that the commission had actually asked for. Moving forward, and I'll read it very quickly. Whereas a robust and effective public transportation system has been consistently demonstrated to be a major factor in the economic growth and development of cities and counties, as well as a gateway of public community prosperity. Whereas the Jefferson County Commission desires the aforementioned for the county and its citizens, whereas the Jefferson County Commission seeks the partnership and support of all state and national stakeholders. Now therefore be resolved, the Jefferson County Commission, that the President of the County Commission hereby authorized to write a letter on behalf of the Commission to the Jefferson County delegation to express the need of their support in securing any and all resources and support for public transportation that in any way benefits the citizens of Jefferson County and improve upon public transportation in Jefferson County.
I move for immediate consideration.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for immediate consideration. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? We'll do it.
I move to add the resolution to the agenda.
Motion's been made. Seconded. All in favor say aye.
Wait a minute, what are we doing now?
All we're doing is saying that we've got all these things coming in and we're asking that our delegation to seek whatever funds they can on their behalf to help improve the transportation.
This was also the
It's
legislative
economic
breakfast.
Yeah.
With the conversation with Senator Smitherman, and we asked him about state support for transportation.
For transit.
This
What about the VIA program?
VIA is a part of that conversation.
Okay.
That's
all right.
The next best thing. But Walter is working on VIA as well.
Okay.
That concludes my report, Mr. Allen.
Good deal. We'll make it.
Move whatever you got.
Well, IT, the first one. Truck delivery configuration services. Sure, you want to add anything else to that?
It's just a change order for its system.
I don't have a motion in the second right now.
A motion, second. Hey, Lashunda, will you second?
Lashunda.
I hear very well.
Will you second that
I
motion?
hear very well.
Okay.
Okay, so that'd be a no.
I'm gonna move your item, but just know I hear very well.
Okay. Second.
Motion second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The first item in the district is an estoppel certificate for the Rocky Ridge Fire District. This is specifically, they're trying to do a refinance on their building, and since the county owns the property, we need to make sure that we sign this saying it's okay. Mr. Lawson, is there anything else you would add to that?
I'm sorry.
On the estoppel certificate, would you add anything else to that? All right. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I have two community grants. One's for Birmingham Youth Lacrosse. It's to support, it's paying the fees for the Jackson Nolan boys and girls lacrosse teams on the high school level. And then the other one is for the Carver wrestling team as they go to state, and also so they can buy some uniforms going into next year.
Move 2 and 3.
I have a motion.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And another item is with economic development and our startups, we always want to make sure that we support our startups the best way we can. And if there's a way that we can have county services support them in their growth. We want to make sure we help them scale quickly. I want to thank Lauren Oliver and Mr. Tellis for doing a demonstration with Mixtros yesterday. It's mixer and introductions smashed together. They are a great program that is a mother-daughter